What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here again for another career video today. Today we're covering, at one point, what was considered the handsomest man in Chicago, and that is Patrick Sharp. If you remember back to my jersey collection video of 2022, I recall that I couldn't find my Patrick Sharp jersey, and I just showed my Marian Hossa red one in exchange from when I was a kid. Well, a few days ago, I found it, and here it is. It's a Reebok size large Patrick Sharp. There's the front. That's the back. There's the front. Nice jersey overall. I wore this for Halloween in 4th grade, so that's cool. And it showed that I had all the forwards from when I was a kid. You had Sharp, Hossa, Tays, and Kane. I'm going to be covering someone that retired that actually played on the team for a while when I was a kid. So Patrick Sharp is in 2001 is the 3rd round pick, 95th overall, and from 2001. So he drafted here, retires in 2017-18. So about an 18-year career there, not bad. And of course, he's drafted by Philadelphia, which comes one of the more lopsided trades in history, not only just for the Hawks, but just in history in general. 2002-03 with Philadelphia, he makes his debut. 3 games played, no goals, no assists, no points. Philadelphia makes the playoffs, but he doesn't play in them. 2003-04, 41 games played as becomes a regular, 5 goals, 2 assists, 7 points. In the playoffs, he plays 12 games as Philadelphia goes to the second round. 1 goal, no assist, 1 point. 2004-05, during the lockout, he plays with the Flyers' AHL affiliate at the time, the Philadelphia Phantoms, known now as the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. I don't know. He wins the Calder Cup with them as well, so he is a Calder Cup champion, not a Stanley Cup champion yet. But in 2005-06, he plays 22 games with the Flyers, 5 goals, 3 assists, 8 points, and then he's traded. Ken Hitchcock is the coach in Philadelphia at the time, and he is not a guy who is a fan of developing rookies. He's more of a veteran player, go get him, that sort of thing, so he really did not have time for Patrick Sharp. So he's traded to Chicago for Matt Allison, who played 11 more games in the NHL, a third in 2006, which became Ryan White, and is traded to Chicago along with Eric Malash. And immediately he makes his impact. With the remainder of 2005-06, 50 games with Chicago, 9 goals, 14 assists, 23 points. So he has about 31 points in 72 games that season. Not too bad for his first full season, essentially. 2006-07, his first full season with Chicago, 80 games played, 20 goals, 15 assists, 35 points. Right there, Philadelphia probably regrets everything, but then again, Philadelphia had a much deeper team at this time. However, Philadelphia did finish last in the league in 2006-07. That's a bizarre thing how that happened. Like, Philadelphia makes the playoffs all these years in a row. Then 2005 or 2006-07, they dead last in the league. And then 2007-08, they're back in the playoffs for the next half decade. It's bizarre how that worked. But yeah, so 20-goal season there. Shows his goal-scoring ability. And at this point in his career, he's got more goals than assists, which is a rarity. 2007-08, it clicks. Everything clicks. Of course, the Hawks don't make the playoffs at this time because 06-07, they get Tays and Kane. 08's the first year with Tays and Kane, and they missed the playoffs that first year just by a few points. 36 goals, 26 assists, 62 points. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, and this trade is a steal that Chicago got out of Philadelphia. 2008-09, he misses some time with injury. 61 games played, 26 goals, 18 assists, 44 points. So a little bit of a drop, but he did miss a bunch of games. In the playoffs, for the first time as a prominent piece, 17 games played, 7 goals, 4 assists, 11 points. And by the end of the playoffs, he somehow was playing on the 4th line against Detroit. I remember him talking about that the 2010 reunion. He was on before that season, he was on a 4th line with Burish and someone else. I think it might have been Eager at the time. But yeah, he had his lead in the playoffs, or he wasn't leading the playoffs, but he was performing that well on the 4th line. 2009-10, he plays all 82 games for one of two times in his career. Yep, 25 goals, 41 assists, 66 points. That's a career high in points for him that season. And in the playoffs, he's a star. 22 games played in the playoffs. He ties for the leading playoff goal scorer. 11 goals, which is first, tied with Dustin Byfuglien. That's playoff. 11 assists, 22 points, and he wins his first Stanley Cup. Now, he leads the playoffs in goals with Byfuglien, and of course, Tays has 29 points. Kane has 28 points that playoffs. So Sharp was a pretty big piece of that as well. Keith, Sharp, Hossa was less of a piece. I believe he had 15 points in that run. But to show that this core that came together was the core and everything worked out. 2010-11 is another big year for Patrick Sharp. He plays 74 games, 34 goals, which is 8th in the league that year, 37 assists, 71 points. In the playoffs, he only plays the 7 games as the Hawks are knocked out in the first round against Vancouver. 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points. He makes the All-Star game, and he's the All-Star game MVP. I mean, for his only All-Star game, I remember it because that was the year that Tays, Kane, Keith, and Sharp all got in, and that was a huge deal at the time. I remember that's when they did the All-Star draft. Like, it wasn't based on division. There was captains. I remember Tays was the one year Tays was the captain for one team and Kane was another on a different team. But then I remember this year that Kane was an assistant captain. Tays, Keith, and Kane ended up on the same team, and Sharp ended up on the Red All-Stars while they ended up on the Blue. It's just something I remember in my childhood that was fun. And if you were last picked, like, you got a car, and Ovechkin and Kessel were like battling it out for that. It was a fun time. 2011-12, 74 games played, another strong season, 33 goals, 36 assists, 69 points. So at this point in his career, you can count on him for about between 25 and 35 goals. Pretty good totals. Top 6 forward, yes. In the playoffs, however, against Phoenix, he only records the 1 goal in 6 games, no assist, 1 point. And then 2012-13, he faces a injury that takes him out almost half the season. He misses 20 games. 28 games played, 6 goals, 14 assists, 20 points. Been on pace for about the usual 65 points that season. 23 games played in the playoffs, 10 goals, 6 assists, 16 points. He is a big-time player. He is a playoff guy, Patrick Sharp. You can see here, point a game here. He's getting older now. At this point, he's 12 years out from being drafted, so he's getting older, but he's still performing. Then 2013-14, he has his best year. 82 games played, 34 goals, which is 10th in the league that year, 44 assists for 78 points, just misses out on the top 10 in scoring that year, 19 games played in the playoffs, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. I'm amazed he didn't make the All-Star game that year. 2014-15, his production kind of drops. It's something felt different about that year. He misses a bunch of times. He plays 68 games, has 16 goals, 27 assists, 43 points. Something felt different, and in the playoffs, it continued to feel different. 23 games played in the playoffs, 5 goals, 10 assists, 15 points. He gets his 3rd Stanley Cup. However, he went 13 games in between, I believe it was like the sweep against Minnesota and then Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final without scoring a goal. And he gets the gimme one because Bishop and Hedman collide with each other in Game 5. And something just looked off about Sharp that year. And of course, because the Hawks are always up against the salary cap, they have to trade him. During the summer of 2015, Patrick Sharp, along with Steven Johns, my dad was pissed about this. My dad was for sure believed Steven Johns was going to be a great defenseman in the NHL. Never really worked out, but they both traded to Dallas. Dad was more. I remember, but just my dad was way more upset about Johns than Sharp because he said Sharp was old. And then Trevor Daley and Ryan Garbett come back to Chicago. Trevor Daley did not work in Chicago. He was a 20-goal defenseman in Dallas at some point. He'd go on to have success with Pittsburgh, and after he left Chicago, he won some cups in Pittsburgh. But he was just not it in Chicago. And Ryan Garbett, I'll give Garbett credit. I liked Ryan Garbett. He played well. For a middle six, bottom six forward, he played well, Garbett. In Dallas in his first season, 2015-16, I remember the comeback Sharp did as well. He got the standing ovation. 76 games played, 20 goals, 35 assists, 55 points. And just like that, he's back. He's a big part in the reason Dallas wins the Central Division that year. 13 games played in the playoffs, 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points. That year was magical for Dallas. The only thing is, they could score, they couldn't keep the puck out of their net. Their goaltending was Niemi, ironically, and Lettinen. And neither of them really wanted to keep a puck out of the net. And against St. Louis, they kind of just nosedived. And I remember I thought Chicago was going to meet up with them and get. I thought Chicago would beat St. Louis that year and then probably beat. And once Dallas beat Minnesota, I really thought they were going to run over Dallas. But yeah, that didn't happen because Chicago can't win some games in overtime. Anyway, that's fine. 2016-17, the floor falls out from underneath Sharp. It all caved in. 48 games played only, 8 goals, 10 assists, 18 points, and no playoffs for the first time since 2007-08. 2017-18, he signs a one-year deal to come back to Chicago. He plays 70 games, 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points. He retires as a Blackhawk. I remember his first game back was that 10-1 game against Pittsburgh, and he scored a goal in that, I remember, and the crowd went nuts. For the totals in his career, however, 939 games, would be well over 1,000 if he didn't miss, well, let's see, you got two games, about 21 games, another 8 games, 20 games, not 20, I should say about 15, 16 games, another 6 games, about half a year, 10, 12 games. Yeah, he'd be around 1,100 games. 287 goals, 333 assists, 620 points, which I thought was low. I thought he honestly got more than that, because there's some players that do have more than that, and it was kind of surprising. In the playoffs, 142 games played, 47 goals, 40 assists, 87 points. For international awards, in the World Championships in 2008, he brings home silver, and he is an Olympic gold medalist in 2014, the year that he puts up all the points. Did not play on the team in 2010, and it's a shame because he probably should have been on that team. But overall, great career for Patrick Sharp. Does he make the Hall of Fame, even though he has a lot of accolades? Well, he doesn't have a lot of accolades. He has some accolades. He's got All-Star Game MVP, which doesn't really matter. He's got international awards, Olympic gold, World Championship silver, 3 Stanley Cups, was top 10 in goal scoring twice in his career. Unfortunately, I don't think he ever does make the Hall of Fame, although he's got the accolades for it. He's kind of like a guy that I'd see kind of like Johan Franzen. Like after he put up 30 goals a year, and except not the injury part. Franzen was injured to hell and back eventually, and mental issues as well. Loved Johan Franzen. Was one of the only Red Wings I liked. But yeah. So Sharp, kind of like that guy, puts up good totals every year, but just did not put enough. Wasn't a dominant player in his era to be made in the Hall of Fame. But of course, I have his jersey, and of course his number 10, of course, might be retired eventually by Chicago. I'm not. Maybe it's possible eventually in the future. Like Sharp and Seabrook are kind of the two odd men out that I think deserve it, but are probably not going to get it. Just that entire core. Same with Jarmelson. He's probably not going to get it because he didn't put up the offensive numbers. He was more of a defensive defenseman. But yeah, Patrick Sharp, one of my favorite players as a kid, one of the most handsome men in Chicago. Still sticking around. He's now a special advisor to the GM for Philadelphia. He was a broadcaster on NBC Sports, and then this previous season on the NBC Sports Chicago for the TV games. But yeah, that's going to be all I have for you guys today. Tell me down below your favorite memory of Patrick Sharp, and I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.